Cole Bishop took a huge step in his second season, but what else do the Bills have at safety? We're exploring that today on Locked On Bills.
You are Locked On Bills, your daily Buffalo Bills podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Bills Mafia? It's Joe Marino, author of the Herd Mentality Substack, co-host of the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast, co-host of the NFL First Read Podcast, and I'm your host of Locked On Bills. Locked On Bills is a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. Want to thank you for making Locked On Bills your first listen every day, and a big welcome and shout out to our everydayers. You know who you are. Those of you who never miss a single episode, I appreciate you all being here very, very much. Well, folks, welcome in. We're talking safeties on today's episode, and there's a lot to get into, of course, highlighting the development of Cole Bishop, but really a lot of question marks outside of Cole Bishop. And so I'm excited to explore all of that with you today on this episode. So let's dive in, and we will start with Cole Bishop, a 2024 second-round pick, number 60 overall. He's 23 years old. He'll turn 24 in October. He's entering year 3 of his 4-year, $6.5 million deal. So that means that after this season, we can start talking about a contract extension for Cole Bishop. And that's how it works in the NFL. After you've been in the league for 3 years, you become extension eligible. That's where we're at with O'Cyrus Torrence right now. And so obviously 2026 will play a huge role in where all that ultimately lands, but be thinking about that because this is when those conversations will start to happen. In 2025, he played in 17 games, was on the field for 91% of the defensive snaps, collected 85 tackles, 4 for loss, 2 sacks, 7 pass breakups, and 3 interceptions. As for his 2025 review, he took the year 2 leap that we hoped he would. You saw the athleticism, you saw the physicality, you saw him make big-time plays on the ball, iced that Jacksonville playoff win. You saw him become a tone setter for this defense. And things were not looking great for a while there. A shaky rookie season, injuries throughout camp, but then he put it all together and fulfilled the promise of being that second-round pick, and he looks like he's going to be an answer for years to come. And so for the 2026 outlook, I'm excited to see him continue his development with Jim Leonhard, continue to grow. And ultimately, I think what's going to be really critical for Cole Bishop moving forward is getting the right player next to him. I don't feel like Taylor Rapp or even Jordan Poyer are great complementary skill sets to what Cole Bishop offers. I'd love to see this team get a true center fielder type safety that allows Cole Bishop to play in more lower alignments, closer to the box, closer to the line of scrimmage, and be that type of a player. And when you consider the types of coverages that Denver ran with Jim Leonhard last year, they ran the 6th highest rate of cover 1, and they were top 5 in man coverage rate. So you're going to have more looks that requires the defense to have that one high safety. And I think that will be huge for Cole Bishop to then be optimized in some lower alignments. So I'm excited for how this has come together. I'm excited for where it can go. I think the big thing for Cole is obviously getting that right player next to him, but maybe clean up some angles. And he's a guy that when he has to trigger and fill from depth, sometimes he can be a little off on angles. And that led to some missed tackles. It led to some runs potentially being a lot bigger than they should have against this Bills defense. But love how this came together and excited for where it's going as it relates to Cole Bishop. All right, now let's move on from Cole Bishop, and now everything gets a little bit different as we consider these other characters that played next to him this year. Let's get to Taylor Rapp next. A 2023 free agent signing. He's 28. He'll turn 29 in December. He's entering the final year of his 3-year, $10.6 million deal. And the Bills can get out of this deal. They can release him right now. They'll save $3.1 million in cap space and only accumulate about $667,000 in dead cap. Seems like a pretty obvious choice, right? In 2025, he played in 6 games. In those 6 games on the field for 96% of defensive snaps and collected 26 tackles. He was dreadful in 2025. Looked like he was making business decisions as a tackler, which was his thing, like one of the better tackling safeties in the league, really, for several years prior. And it all fell off this past year in those 6 games. He missed 25% of his tackles. He was a mess in coverage. And then he struggles through these 6 games. And then all of a sudden, Sean McDermott says he's on injured reserve and he's having knee surgery, and we're not sure he's going to return this year. Like what happened? Yeah, he had some knee stuff during training camp, but he never really missed time. He's out there playing nearly 100% of snaps through 6 games. There's never a moment on the field where you're like, oh, there it is. He got hurt. It was like, oh, he's out for the year, potentially. He's going to have surgery. He has a knee injury that he's been battling for several weeks. Okay. And when that came through, I think most people thought, well, geez, he's been a liability out there. I'm not sure that this is a loss. In fact, it seems like anybody would be better than Taylor Rapp out there. So he came out of 2024 with a lot of promise, and I thought he did a good job. And then just absolutely labored through 6 games and was a major detriment to the defense. So as for the 2026 outlook, I'm not of the opinion that he should be back. You take advantage of that opportunity to clear a tick over $3 million in cap space with very modest dead cap accumulation, and I think you just got to be done here. I don't know the severity of the injury. I don't know what the recovery's like, but I'm good, right? Just move on. A lot of great transitional opportunities with this defense for players that were kind of favorites of McDermott and Babich. And I think it makes it a lot easier to just move on. And I think that's what they should do with Taylor Rapp. All right, speaking of moving on, there's a couple of other expiring contracts that we need to address here coming up in the next segment, including Jordan Poyer. What should the Bills do there? And what do they have in Jordan Hancock? We'll explore that next. Folks, be sure to stick with me. If you've ever hired someone who looks good on paper but wasn't the right fit, you know how important that is. When you want candidates who truly match what you're looking for, trust Indeed sponsored jobs. Hiring Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your post seen on other sites. Indeed sponsored jobs puts your post at the top of the page and helps you reach the right candidates faster. If I needed to hire someone, I'd go straight to Indeed and be very specific about what I need. Real experience, not just a resume buzzword. Instead of struggling to get your job post seen, Indeed sponsored jobs helps your listing stand out and reach quality candidates faster. Sponsored jobs boost your posts to the people who are the best match for your role, and that makes a real difference. You can spend more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with less stress, less time, and more results using Indeed sponsored jobs. Listeners of this show get a $75 sponsored job credit to give your job the premium placement it deserves at Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL. Just go to Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL right now and support the show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, do it the right way with Indeed. All right, welcome back. Let's talk about a few more players. Next up is Jordan Poyer, a 2025 free agent signing. Of course, we know he really goes back to 2017, but he left, came back, so He was acquired through a 2025 free agent move. 34 years old. He'll turn 35 in April. His contract is expired. Of course, he initially signed with the practice squad and then gets to the active roster. And in 2025, he played in 10 games. In those 10 games, on the field for 72% of snaps, collected 70 tackles, a tackle for loss, a half a sack, 3 pass breakups, and an interception. I thought he did a great job, all things considered. Of course, he wasn't vintage Poyer, but he stabilized the defense. There is no doubt about it. Everything was different when he stepped into this lineup. Everybody on that defense, especially in the secondary, got a lot better the moment Jordan Poyer replaced Taylor Rapp. I thought the Bills did a good job of working around his limitations. He did have to play in deeper alignments. He doesn't have a ton of range. And so they implemented the dime package. They would bring in Cam Lewis. They bring in Jordan Hancock to get a little bit more athleticism on the field. But you could tell his communication and presence changed everything with the defense. And then you felt his absence after he got injured. He gets injured against the Browns, has that hamstring deal. He misses a few weeks, comes back against Jacksonville. He's a positive against Jacksonville. Then he goes down and Jordan Hancock comes in, and boy, the Jaguars destroyed him. And then, unfortunately, he wasn't able to go against Denver. The Bills lose the game, and I think that Jordan Poyer would have been a helpful player to have against Denver. Maybe that game's completely different. But you felt his absence before he entered the lineup, right? And you felt it after. Jordan Poyer mattered for this defense. Now, I don't know if he's going to matter moving forward. So as we get to the 2026 outlook, I'm not really expecting him to be back. I think he was able to orchestrate what he did under the circumstances last year, having been in the defense for as long as he was in it. I think his knowledge of the scheme under the circumstances of last year were huge. But that's not the case anymore. It's a different defense. It's a different defensive staff. And so I don't think that he's really a candidate to do something similar. I'm not sure if he's going to continue to play in the NFL. But I do believe, like we've talked about for a lot of players, Epinesa, Milano, Daquan Jones, Trey White, it's run its course. It's run its course. And I think the good part about this story for Poyer, I think you can apply it to Milano. You can apply it to Tre'Davious White. It at least ended somewhat on a high note, right? It's no longer, oh, well, he gets cut and goes to Miami and that's it. No, he came back and helped the team. Trey White gets cut, goes and plays for a couple of teams, came back and helped the team. Matt Milano, a couple of injury-filled seasons. His last year, he came back and really helped the team. So we can celebrate that, but also I think that's it. Let's talk Jordan Hancock, a 2025 fifth-round pick, number 170 overall. He's 22 years old. He'll turn 23 in August, entering year 2 of his 4-year, $4.5 million rookie deal. As a rookie, he played in 13 games and was on the field for 19% of defensive snaps and collected 22 tackles. So that equals 183 defensive snaps for Jordan Hancock as a rookie. And I know that there's some conversation about whether he's a slot or he's a safety. In 2025 for the Bills, he played 6 snaps in the slot. That's it. He played 170-something as a safety. So while things were blurry, I think, throughout the offseason and where he actually got most of his training, when it came time for him to play in games, he played safety. And he struggled. I don't think there was ever a point this year where Jordan Hancock looked comfortable. Even when in the dime roll. he was really shaky with his coverage spacing, reading the backfield, getting into throwing lanes, feeling routes. It was very shaky. And then you saw him have to play extensively, and it didn't go well. The Jaguars absolutely destroyed him. And I think there's a lot here. I mean, not having a true position hurts. Hey, welcome to the NFL. Learn all these spots and we'll figure it out. Okay, that's tough. And that's what they did at training camp and in OTAs. I mean, the staff told you that. They told you, yeah, we're trying them everywhere. We'll see what sticks. Well, it's hard to learn a spot when you're doing that. In addition to transitioning to the National Football League. So that's the challenge of versatility. Versatility is going to keep you employed. It's going to provide value in some ways, but it's oftentimes detrimental to a player's development. The scouting staff loved Jordan Hancock. That was one of my favorite parts of after the post-draft stuff that comes out. You get this sense that this was a scouting staff favorite. Everybody loved this guy. And he had plenty of likable traits on college film at Ohio State. But it certainly didn't come together as a rookie for the Bills. And I think that's understandable. And I don't think we should be writing off Jordan Hancock, but you can't ignore the struggles that he had and the offseason that he had and feel like, year one didn't go great. Again, I'm not sure how much that's his fault. I am very curious to see how Jim Leonhard uses him. I'm looking forward to him taking a step, but I think they got to find the right position for him to play and learn and develop and grow. What's challenging here is you just don't know what to expect. You really don't. I have no idea what to expect. And so in a perfect world, Jordan Hancock in a limited role flashed and played well. And you're like, oh, maybe he's got the stuff. Maybe he's the guy that could play next to Cole Bishop. Maybe he's a player that we can use in sub packages as a hybrid slot safety and feel like we like what that can mean to our defense. But you don't have any clarity at all. And so I'm hopeful to see this come together, but certainly a little discouraged based on how the rookie season went. All right, we got more to do. Sam Franklin, I want to talk about him. Darnell Savage, DeMar Hamlin, Wandae Owens. I want to touch on them and then really tie this together by reflecting on what the Bills have and what they need. So we'll do that next. So folks, be sure to stick with me. The winter games are officially here, and if you're anything like us, you're locking in for events you only get to see on the biggest stage every 4 years. And that's why following the winter games on FanDuel just makes sense. From medal counts to individual events to finding your angle on the sports you care about most, FanDuel gives you more ways to stay connected to the action. You'll enjoy the drama of those curling matches that start slow but get intense fast. The speed skating races that are decided by inches. Hockey games that are different right from the opening face-off. And even niche events become must-watch when you're fully locked into the competition. And FanDuel keeps the entire Olympic experience engaging from start to finish. The Winter Games are on, and there's no better way to follow them than with FanDuel. FanDuel, play your game. All right, folks, welcome back. Let's continue this safety conversation. Sam Franklin up next, a 2025 free agent signing. He turned 30 earlier in February. His contract is expired. In 2025, he played in 17 games, only 6 total defensive snaps, but 329 special teams snaps. Of course, that was his role, right? Special teams guy. And I thought he did a quality job. There were certainly some games where you were like totally aware of how good he was as a special teamer. And there's room on every NFL roster for players like this that, yeah, you don't want them involved too much offensively or defensively, but they give you a lot on special teams, and Sam Franklin's that guy. We've seen these types of players throughout the years in Buffalo, like a Saron Neal or a Tyler Medikevich or a Tywan Jones. These players they're things in the league. And Sam Franklin was this past year's version of that. And I thought he did a good job for that role. As far as the 2026 outlook, I think he was very clearly a Chris Tabor special, who was the Bills' special teams coordinator last year, who is now Miami's special teams coordinator. And, he had a time with him in Carolina. And then, very somewhat abruptly before the start of the season, he gets signed to the active roster in Buffalo. And it's definitely just a Chris Tabor special. So I wouldn't mind Sam Franklin back. He's a good special teams player. But is Sam Franklin just inevitably going to go to the next place like Chris Tabor goes? And I could see that happening. So we'd love to have him back. I won't lose sleep over it. Maybe the Bills can find a younger, more cost control player that can develop with Jeff Rodgers, the Bills' new special teams coordinator. Maybe Jeff Rodgers has his own version of a Sam Franklin. I think we'll see how that comes together. But he did a good job for a special teams ace, if you will. A few more players that were on the roster last year. Darnell Savage came after the Darius Slay debacle, and he's an intriguing player. Was a first-round pick by the Packers, started a lot of games, signs a decent deal with Jacksonville, starts some games, gets cut after 2 seasons, finds his way to Buffalo. I don't think he's ever quite fulfilled the promise of being a first-round pick. I think he's at times been a decent player. I don't feel much urgency for him to be back. It sounded like Sean McDermott was kind of interested in him, and he said they had their eye on him throughout the years during the draft process when he was a free agent. He signed a decent deal with Jacksonville, and I don't think the Bills were in a position to pay him starter money. I thought when he was on the field, I thought he didn't play a ton, but there were some huge lowlights. Of course, he gave up a touchdown in the loss to Denver. Had a really bad angle in another game later in the season that he was on the field. But the play that he didn't make that nobody is talking about that I want to bring up once again, that was as big of a moment as any, and the Bills lost to Denver, was the Bills forced Denver to punt, right, on the opening drive of overtime. And so the Bills would get the ball back, and all they need to do is score, and they win the game, right? Do you remember where the Bills started with the ball? Deep in their own territory, inside the 10-yard line. The reason that was the case was Darnell Savage did not block his man. He was one of the jammers along that sideline, and he was in a deeper alignment that was designed to kind of get some leverage and hit the block. He never blocked the gunner, who had a free path to the punt returner, and the ball couldn't be fielded, and the Bills wound up starting way back in their own territory. If that ball could have been fielded, which could have happened if that block was made, the Bills start that drive much, much further down the field. Maybe even the 30-yard line. Maybe even a big return could have happened. But Savage didn't even block the guy. Go back and watch it. Go back and watch that play. See what he did. Very consequential. So, yeah, no urgency to bring Darnell Savage back. He can go try to get his career going somewhere else. And then Damar Hamlin. Look, Damar Hamlin's going to be forever part of the story of the Buffalo Bills, right? He will. And it'll always be of great disappointment to me that he doesn't have a comeback player of the year trophy to memorialize what happened. An absolute disgrace. An absolute disgrace. I think he gave the Bills a lot as a late day 3 pick, a couple of years as a starter, some depth, some special teams. He's a limited player, right? And so could he be back as a special teamer that provides some depth? Okay, that'd be fine. But I'm also fine with the Bills not continuing with Damar Hamlin. Again, kind of a favorite of the previous regime. They're not here. They're not here. So you can tip your hat and admire so much, but ultimately a ripe opportunity to move on. Wandae Owens signed a futures deal. He was an undrafted free agent this past year, super athletic safety. I'm excited for him to be back in the mix. I don't know what to really expect, but he has intriguing developmental upside, and I'm glad that he'll be part of the mix moving forward. So what do the Bills have? Well, they have Cole Bishop. That's cool. Love that. They technically have Taylor Rapp. Now, I would be stunned if they didn't release him and get that cap space and move on, but they don't have to, right? There is a world where the Bills are like, yeah, Taylor Rapp's back in 2026 and looks like he'll be our starter next to Cole Bishop. I'd be disappointed if that were the case, but until they release him, that is a possibility. And they also have Jordan Hancock, which we've already discussed is kind of a confusing thing. They need to find the right role and let him develop. But that's technically what the Bills have. Bishop, Rapp, who's probably going to be cut, and Jordan Hancock. What do they need? They need a starter next to Cole Bishop. They need a starter next to Cole Bishop. And obviously, I want one that has range and center fielder skills so that it allows Cole Bishop to play in lower alignments. The name that I kind of have targeted is PJ Locke. Was a third safety for Denver for the last few years. Has filled in when asked to and played well. I love his story. And he feels like the right type of investment for the spot. I mean, the Bills have needs. They have needs at receiver, edge rusher, defensive line, linebacker, safety, general depth things. There's a lot to figure out. And so it's center, left guard. I mean, there's so much. They're not going to be able to have a handsomely paid veteran in every one of those spots. So where can you find economic answers that can be at least a sufficient answer? And I think that safety spot next to Cole Bishop is one that you think, yes, that can be it. We don't have to take a big swing with a veteran. We don't have to invest a super high draft pick into an answer. We can bring in a PJ Locke who knows the scheme, that's kind of been flashy when given a chance, does give you that deep coverage skill. That makes sense to me and would be on a modest type deal. I think you're in certain spots, left guard, safety, maybe that linebacker spot. I think that's where you're going to want to try to find some value. And so you need a starter next to Cole Bishop, and you need depth. You need some depth here. So there's going to be, I would guess, 3 new players added to this mix. You could have 2 or 3 players that make the roster that, weren't on the team last year. So there's going to be some transition here. But the good news is that through it, Cole Bishop exists, and we love what happened this past year, but got to get it figured out around him. All right, folks, there you have it. We've now done all the positions. I have now given you analysis on every player that was on the Bills roster last year and talked about the season, talked about the outlook, talked about the contract opportunities. And with that done, it really has laid a foundation for where these conversations are going to start going next week, where we get into ways for Brandon Beane to fill these holes. And so we'll start getting into free agent analysis, salary cap analysis, draft stuff to start to come up with some good ideas here to build this thing out and check the boxes responsibly, but also aggressively. And we'll start to put that puzzle together next week. So don't miss anything. Make sure you're subscribed. Would love it if you took a second to rate, review, and share the podcast. Have a great rest of your day. Go Bills. And I look forward to catching up with you again real soon.